Hello. Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jesse Forrester. I am a previous winner of the Zayed Sustainability Prize, and I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called Mazi Limited, which is an electric car company. And today I'm joined by a renowned legend and a personal icon of mine, Akon. I think he can introduce himself.
Yes, my name is Akon. Started as a recording artist, entrepreneur, philanthropist, influencer, I would like to say. Ultimately, from there, I turned into a businessman focused on energy, sustainable energy in Africa, and became the founder of Akon Lighting Africa, which now is Akon Also Lighting America, which is an initiative to support the UN SDGs to help the U.S. In many ways transform their traditional use of energy into more renewable. So we're playing a huge role in that. And then after that, just trying to find a way to where my influence can help to change the world.
Awesome, Akon.
Yep.
I think that's a really good segue into our conversation for today. From your singing days and now being an entrepreneur, what has that taught you, especially when you're doing Akon Lighting Africa, in terms of sustainability for the future? What have you seen as that having an impact in your work?
It actually had a huge impact in my work, ultimately because I started to realize that the talent I was given was made for other purposes outside of entertainment, and I started to realize just how much influence that we as entertainers and influencers actually have on the impact of the world. And more so than anything, the impact that we have on the younger generation coming up. Also to helping them decide their purpose and how they can utilize their energy moving forward. So I kind of take that a lot more serious now.
Exactly. And I know that you're in a couple of countries all over Africa. And what has been the challenge, especially when it comes to uptake of microgrids in low community areas? What have you experienced?
In the beginning, the biggest challenge, honestly, was convincing the leaders that sustainability was a huge priority. I started around 2010. We were coming into Africa with the solar initiative. It was funny enough, a lot of leaders didn't even know what solar was at that time. But the biggest issue after just getting them more educated to solar and other renewable sources was the financing. I think financing till this day is probably the biggest challenge in African countries. Just watching the panel before us, they made an exemplary point as to everyone wants to transform to get to more renewable, sources. But the problem is, how do you pay for that? If you're being energized by coal and you want to transfer into gas, and then from gas to whatever renewable, but it's the transition phase between the two parties that allows it to be a lot more challenging and difficult when you don't have financial facilities willing to take on the risk that's necessary.
Exactly. I think also in my personal experience, I've faced issues when it comes to financing for certain projects.
Right.
And so does this have any tie with your cryptocurrency, Acoin?
The Acoin is more of a futuristic play because I'm realizing just how much control Africans need to have of their own finances. And the beautiful part about in Africa is that we not only create our own jobs, but we also create our own trading mechanisms. It's to the point where in certain villages in Africa, they're actually utilizing cell phone minutes as currency. So when you can go to a local village and use your cell phone minutes to buy bread, or produce or fruit, and trade it for cell phone minutes, that's when you realize, okay, there's not only an opportunity here, but the evolution of digital itself is starting to really transcend into the future. And I feel like cryptocurrency will not only give that challenge a solution, but it also creates all the securities that come with the digital world, especially when you're talking about crypto, when encrypted aspect of the digital aspect creates the security that we need. Because as you know, one of the biggest challenges we have in Africa is, corruption.
Yes.
And I think with the cryptocurrency, it helps to delete that issue all in itself.
Yes, precisely. And I think when you mentioned the whole issue towards financing, that's why I thought there was the link in there.
Right.
But you have been a sustainability leader in Africa. And Africa is heralded to be the next big continent and the final frontier. In fact, it's said that the next face of an average person in the world is a young black African woman. And so what do you think in terms of what's happening on the ground right now can be changed with leadership to ensure that there is that access to financing and access to opportunity for young people around the world?
I think actually what's happening now is a natural occurrence of what needs to happen. The younger generation is taking more full charge. The diaspora is being a lot more activated. And I think that's what's going to be the key for Africa's growth, is the diaspora actually utilizing their resources, their knowledge, and coming back home and, you know, pretty much playing their role and playing their part. And I think that's going to be the key, you know. But the younger generation are a lot more disruptive. They have a lot more heart and courage to make these differences, make these changes, and express their feelings as to how things are going, to make those changes and put more pressure on the government level. So I think this generation has what it actually takes to take Africa to the next level for sure.
I think that gives me hope as being a member of this young generation. And I think one of the biggest issues we face is also having people take us seriously in terms of what we're doing, because there's always that aspect of you're young, you know, you don't really know what you're doing. So in your experiences coming up and also having passed through the same area, do you have any advice for young people who are here in the audience today?
Well, the thing is, in Africa, we always had culture that would kind of slow progress down. Because culture, as you look at, is related to tradition. And the traditional way in Africa is that you respect your elders and you do whatever they tell you, which is still tradition till this day. On the flip side, though, the elders always feel that the younger you are, the less knowledgeable you are, and sometimes the less capable you aren't. True. You know, and today's future kind of contradicts that, because the youngest minds are more so oftentimes the most brilliant one in the room, especially when you're dealing with a world that's kind of being driven and fueled by today's new technology. And we're a lot more ahead of that curve, and we can teach our elders a lot more about that. But unfortunately, sometimes because of tradition, they don't oftentimes take the advice until it's too late. So I think the key is the communication between the generations, and also allowing the older generation to kind of be educated to what we're doing, giving them a better understanding of what the future holds digitally, and giving them a nice crash course, as you can call it, as to how it relates to their generation and how it coincides and merges with ours. Because I think that conversation is missing, because oftentimes we are afraid to have those conversations to tell our fathers and grandparents, no, you're wrong. That's true. You know, it's like, yeah, but not quite. Yeah. Are you calling me a liar? No, but, you know, so it's really, I think it's more of a traditional gap that we just have to kind of figure out a way to communicate with each other.
Yes. And so, as you're speaking, you mentioned that sometimes it's too late before they realize something's going on.
Right.
And with the recent happenings, for example, in Australia, with the fires and climate action, and Greta Thunberg was recently in the UN telling people that we need to wake up. And I think being here at the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week is amazing, because, you know, we're focusing on renewable energy, we're focusing on the future. And so in what ways do you think we can combat this, especially as young people inheriting mistakes of people that have gone before us? And what kind of world will that look like in the future?
That's actually a great question, I think, but we have to really pay attention to what's happening in the world. You know, I think as people, we become very arrogant to nature, and we honestly believe that it can't happen to us, and it won't happen in my neighborhood, it won't happen in my area. And you see in the signs every day, like areas where it used to, and I'm traveling worldwide, and I'm physically seeing the difference in the climate. Like, areas where it used to be hot all year round is now snowing. Areas where it used to be snowing now, the ice is melting. And it's to the point where you have a lot more natural disasters, you're having a lot more hurricanes, you're having a lot more earthquakes. Like, the earth is talking to us, and we're literally clearly ignoring it. And we cannot not expect it to come back on us in the future if we don't literally control it today.
Yes.
And our arrogance has to be put aside, and we have to really focus on the climate. Because I think if we don't, we're walking towards a very disastrous future.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think for me especially, because I just turned 21 and I'm really thinking about what scientists were saying. We had 12 years and now the time has shortened. And I'm trying to also realize how would I, as a young person, also help shape the conversation
Right.
aside from awareness. And I know that young people are coming up with different products and different ideas. As you said, it's time for the young people to teach the older generation
Right.
about how things are going to work. And you said there's no space for such dialogue to happen. But how would we ensure that that happens on not only like a country level or a continental level, but on a global scale where young people are taking charge?
Well, I think it gets to the point where your life have to have just as much value as the currency. It's that simple. I think sometimes we put business ahead of our natural well-being. And people make business decisions no matter how many people or who it hurts, as long as they make a profit.
That's true.
And I think as long as we're in that mind state, we're going to always be at odds of what's happening, and we're always going to be at fear of what our future looks like, and we're not going to be comfortable. It's impossible to live comfortable when you're thinking in that way. So we have to be able to put so much more value in our life and our well-being before we can substitute that for a profit today.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest problem, because even when you look at all these wars that's being created around the world, it's all about money and control. And it's just like we have to be able to value our life a lot more than that. And I think the moment we get to that state of mind, then the real conversation can be had as to what needs to happen and how we can, challenge all these problems that's happening around the world.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you know that congratulations, Akon. So Akon City is going to happen in Senegal.
Right.
And I think that's a huge achievement, especially because of how you've been a leader in sustainability on the continent. And that kind of portrays what that's going to look like. So could you just walk us through your vision for Akon City and how exactly it's going to change the conversation about sustainability?
Well, the way I look at Akon City is actually going to be built in Senegal, West Africa. And it's really going to be, more of a pilot of what a city in Africa can be. It's a very futuristic city, crypto-based. All the latest technologies that exist today, we want to be able to implement within the city, utilize it to pretty much troubleshoot all the issues that's happening in current modern cities today. We want to be able to go around that. It's going to be built, entirely by the young generation, young techs, young minds, futuristic thoughts, no borders, like really what a futuristic city can become in Africa. And I think in Senegal is like the perfect way, because in the perfect place because of the destination. It allows people from all over the world to make one trip direct into Senegal, which is only 6 hours from Dubai, 6 hours from London, 6 hours from Morocco, 6 hours from the United States, 6 hours from everywhere.
So it makes
Ethiopia,
sense.
it's like the perfect destination.
Right.
And I think it will create a demand for that model to be replicated all throughout Africa.
Wow. And so after, with your plans for Akon City, what's kind of like your vision for the future, and what steps are you going to take?
Well, the steps is really to communicate. It's about uniting Africa, really.
Okay.
And I think one of Africa's weakest link is the unity, not only in the people, but in the countries. Because you can be in a place that's literally 2-hour drive.
Right.
And you can't enter without a visa. And that's unheard of. This only in Africa you find this.
Yes.
And it's because of Africa being controlled by so many different foreign countries and so many different agendas that Africans themselves don't control their own continent. And I think when you create an environment that allows them to actually come together, be able to travel within each other's countries, be able to trade amongst one another, communicate amongst one another, it only allows the economy to grow in a more vibrant, more safer, and more unified way. And I think that's going to be the ultimate goal, is finding mechanisms that allows people to be people and be neighbors and trade amongst each other. Just create that unity that allows an economy to properly grow. But when you create that separation amongst those tiers and those countries and those people, it only creates conflict, it creates wars, it creates confusion, it creates distance. And I think distance right now is going to be Africa's worst enemy.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, I know for young people in the audience, you've managed to evolve over time and clearly shown that you can have multiple passions.
Right.
But what does that look like, especially for someone who doesn't really know where they want to be or their purpose in life?
Mm-hmm.
They're just trying to figure themselves out. What kind of advice would you give to them?
Well, I mean, the thing is, trying to figure out, you waste a lot of time. Just do what feels natural to you. Because what you're meant to do, you're going to do naturally. This is one thing I've realized. Oftentimes I remember when I was younger in high school trying to figure out what I want to be, when I want to grow up. I'm doing what I thought I would never, ever do. Like, who ever thought, that I'd be a music star doing energy? Like, this is just unheard. This is nothing I've ever, in my mind, wildest imagination, dreamed of. So I realized that in life, you just have to do what you feel, what feels right to you. And that instinct alone is going to guide you towards what your main purpose is, And I think as long as you follow that energy to where you think you are going, and it's oftentimes your passion, because your passion is going to always open the doors for all the areas and places you always would want to be. And it also creates the opportunity for what you want to do, because one thing about your passion is that when you're passionate about something, you do it all the time. And anything that you do all the time, you become great at. And oftentimes, anything that you're great at, people will pay you for that service. And once they pay you for that service, now you can utilize those finances towards whatever goals and aspirations that you always had. And it creates that mechanism for you to be who you are.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
And I just want to make sure that I have enough time for questions if the audience has any.
Yeah.
But as a final piece, what would your parting shot be for people who may want to benefit and help young people, especially in terms of sustainability and making sure that their impact is felt within maybe the African continent or the world? How can they actually contribute and help the young people?
Well, I think contributing and helping the young people should oftentimes be natural, because without guidance, none of us can get anywhere in life. But I think it also depends on what your agenda is.
Right.
If your agenda is to, advance in life financially, there's no better place to invest in Africa.
Right.
Africa is the future. I
Yes.
mean, hands down. There's nowhere in the world that creates opportunity as Africa has today. If you hesitate and wait, it's too late.
Right.
You have to know what value looks like before it's created.
Yeah.
And when you look at any country that's been fully developed up until now, to where the development can't even be accelerated anymore, just look at what China was 30 years ago and where it is today.
Exactly, yeah.
That's tomorrow's Africa. So you got to know opportunity. Opportunity is something you have to be able to see and just know when you see it. It's not, I can't beat you with a hammer to kind of put it I don't see a better opportunity. And trust me, I'm a world traveler, entrepreneur, and I invest in things that I know for sure is going to bring me back my investment. And I know for sure if you're a future investment and you look at life from a standpoint of a visionary, you have to know that Africa is the future and the best place to invest.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Akon giving you the tips and trades to what you need to do for the future. Now, I'd love to open up the floor to the audience if you have any questions for Akon, and we can then move very swiftly. Are there any questions?
Yep,
No
guess
questions. Okay, awesome. Cool. So Akon, it's been a pleasure having you here on stage. And thank you everyone for coming to see. I am deeply inspired, and especially because I think I speak for young people when I say this, is sometimes it's really difficult for us to actually break through some ceilings that we have, and for us to actually go out there and pursue our passions. So access to finances is going to be an important factor.
Right, right.
Access to opportunities for people and growing more and more as time goes along.
Right.
So thank you so much for helping shape the conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, let it not only stay here, but please tweet about it, put it on your social media, and find a young person who you can invest in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.